In the quiet town of Sturgis, Michigan, a gruesome discovery was made that sent shockwaves through the community. As investigators searched for answers, what they uncovered was so disturbing, it chills the soul. Shrouded behind a veil of normalcy, one figure stood at the center of a nightmarish saga, and his chilling crimes left a community grappling with the true face of evil. Viewer discretion is advised. It was the evening of May 22, 2019, when a chilling phone call was made to the St. Joseph County Central Dispatch. An anonymous voice, identifying himself only as Stephen, claimed that a man named Wade Allen had committed a heinous crime.
Hello?
Did you see this firsthand, or he tell you this, or how?
He told me about it and asked me if I wanted to see or see the body, and I said no.
Okay.
Okay, well, I don't think he's going to be very cooperative with you.
Okay. Well, most people aren't.
This one call would unravel a series of events that exposed a gruesome truth, shaking the quiet town of Sturgis, Michigan to its core.
They found a woman's dismembered body in his apartment.
Stephen, the 911 caller, provided a disturbing account of a confession of a gruesome crime committed by his longtime friend, Wade Allen. The caller directed authorities to the intersection of Maple and Hatch Streets. He claimed that Allen had confessed to killing his girlfriend, Kelly Jean Warner, dismembering her body, and hiding her remains in a cooler inside his apartment. Armed with this information, officers Wired, Freds, and Edgington of the Sturgis Police Department set out to locate Wade Allen's apartment. It was approximately 11:12 p.m. when the officers arrived on scene. The apartment building looked run down and had an eeriness about it. The officers stepped through a dilapidated doorway into a darkened hall that led up a few steps to the entry door of apartment 2. After a few moments, Wade Allen answered their knock, stepped out into the hallway, and closed the door behind him. The officers inquired about Kelly Warner, but initially, the officer, whether intentionally or unintentionally, used the wrong name, stating, "We're looking for Kimberly." If you watch Allen's body language carefully, he instantly tenses up and asks a clarifying question, "Kelly?" which proves to be his first misstep in this interaction.
Hi, Wade.
Hey, Wade. How you doing, man?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good.
I remember you from the Speedway.
3537, Super 5.
What are you up to now?
Not much. No.
Gotcha. We're looking for Kimberly.
Kelly?
Or Kelly.
You know Kelly?
Kimberly or Kelly?
From the shelter, maybe?
KJ?
KJ?
Yeah.
It looks as though Allen realized his mistake and tries to reset himself to a more casual response, and claimed he hadn't seen her recently, suggesting she might be in Kalamazoo. More specifically, Allen stated, "I haven't heard from that person in some months." As is often the case, Allen is attempting to put emotional distance between himself and his victim by referring to her as that person rather than her name. This dehumanizes her. Dehumanizing the victim is a common trait in perpetrators, as it makes it easier to carry out the deeds that repel most of us. If the victim is seen as subhuman in the predator's eyes, then harming that person, in whatever form that comes, is no more consequential than what squashing a roach would be to the rest of us. When the officer asked if they could search his apartment, Allen refused, citing the mess inside. He proposed that if they returned after he'd had a chance to clean, he would allow them entry. But the officers weren't convinced. Pressing Wade further, the officers directed Allen to put on shoes, informing him that he would be detained outside while they obtained a search warrant. Reluctantly, Allen agreed to allow one of the officers in to take a quick look around to ensure Warner wasn't there. In this moment, I believe that Allen probably assumed that he could more easily control the course of the search just dealing with one officer, and so, as the officer entered, Allen led him on a very calculated and cursory tour of the apartment.
Oh, you just want to walk in, that's it?
Yeah, that's basically all we want to do is just verify.
Our bosses want to make sure she's not here. So
Yeah.
we want to do what we got to do for our job, and then we're out.
And if she's here, we don't care. We could just say, hey, okay, if she's not here,
Do you mind if it's just
One of you then?
one of us is fine.
Do you want to come in?
I'll go and wait. Thank you.
I know you know me enough, like.
Yeah, I just.
After quickly directing the officer's attention to a side bedroom that was just off the main living area, Alan pointed out that the bedroom was in fact empty and then attempted to usher the officer back outside. But the officer turned away from the bedroom and scanned across the main living room area, where his eyes were drawn to a large cooler that was tucked into the corner of the living room. He asked about its contents. Alan nonchalantly replied that he was preparing for summer.
Alright, man. What's in the cooler?
With his suspicion mounting, the officer requested to open the cooler, but Alan refused, stating there's nothing there and that he showed him everything and that he's helped them out, all the while displaying an air of confusion as to why the matter is being pressed. Alan then begins to lead the officer back toward the entry door of the apartment. Now under heightened suspicion, the officer handcuffed Alan and led him outside, placing him in the back of a patrol car, explaining they would wait there while securing a search warrant.
Well, that's for when the summer comes around. I'm gonna have parties and stuff. So.
Alright, no problem. Can you open that for me and then we'll get out of here?
Well, not right now. I can't. Like, I mean, I want to save that for later.
Okay.
For when the sun gets here. So. But I showed you. She hasn't been here in forever.
Okay. Well, you don't. Why don't you just open that cooler and we'll get out of here? I just want to make sure anywhere that she could be hiding.
She's not gonna be hiding.
Well, okay. I just need to know that. Okay.
No, I mean, I can help you out there, but I've shown you everything.
Okay. All right. You won't.
I haven't seen her like I said in forever.
Nope. You don't have no closets or.
No. I mean, that's it. And that's it.
Okay.
But she's not here and hasn't been. I wish she was.
All right, man. You can walk me to the front then. So.
All right.
You won't open that cooler for me?
Well,
Can you open the fridge for me? Make sure she's not hiding in there.
there's no point in the fridge either. Like, I mean, it's just food and stuff.
I understand.
You know.
All right. Why don't you throw your shoes on real quick?
Well, I helped you out. I showed
You did partially, but you have shoes you can throw on real quick?
a little bit. But here, I'll help you.
Okay, I'll help you out. Go on out.
Well, I gotta get
You're detained right now. Okay, go on out.
I'm detained.
You're detained. Right. Walk out there.
You said let
I
me
said
get my shoes on.
you're not gonna get them on now. I'm giving you the opportunity to walk out there. Do it now. You got anything illegal on you?
No, I don't.
Okay, put your hands behind your back.
You got a knife or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Why don't you turn around against the wall real slowly?
With the threat of detainment now looming over Alan, he shifts tactics, claiming he was experiencing
let's go out there
anxiety
in my car
and
and we'll talk.
claustrophobia, and if he could go back inside, he would allow the officer to peek inside the cooler. Once inside, Alan reluctantly agreed to allow the officer to look inside the cooler. Officer Wire, directing Alan to step back, slowly opened the cooler and was confronted with the horrific sight of the remains of 42-year-old Kelly Jean Warner. The officer immediately closed the cooler and placed 35-year-old Wade Eugene Allen under arrest. This gruesome discovery confirmed the nightmarish tale told by the 911 caller Stephen. But what the officers had seen up to this point was only a small glimpse of the horror that had taken place inside the nondescript apartment located at the intersection of Maple and Hatch Streets. The subsequent search warrant and official search revealed the full extent of Allen's crime. Kelly Jean Warner's dismembered remains were indeed hidden in the cooler, but not just the large cooler that Officer Wired had seen in the living room, but rather multiple coolers. It was approximately 17 days after the murder that Allen had set aside enough money to purchase an extra large cooler, which he planned to use to dispose of Kelly Jean's remains. Up to that point, Kelly Jean's body remained naked in the bathtub inside the apartment, where Allen had continued to heap abuse on Kelly's remains even after her death. But as Allen set about placing her lifeless body inside the cooler, he could not make her entire body fit. He then proceeded proceeded to dismember her into multiple pieces and placed her lower limbs into a separate, smaller cooler, which he tucked away in the bedroom. The chilling confession from Alan, during which he repeatedly attempted to conceal the full story of what actually happened, would ultimately unravel to reveal the gruesome events that led to the slow and agonizing death of Kelly Jean Warner. The evidence found at the scene, along with testimony provided to authorities by Alan's cellmates, would paint a grotesque and haunting picture of a brutal and calculated murder that was so heinous, even seasoned investigators were sickened at the sight. The following is a summary of the events that occurred over the course of several weeks that ultimately led to the death of Kelly. As the nature of her relationship with Alan became increasingly volatile, Kelly Jean confided in a friend about her relationship issues with Alan, namely that he was too rough during intimacy. Upon learning of this, Alan was furious as his personal matters weren't to be discussed with others. According to the testimony given by one of Alan's cellmates, from that point on, Alan began tying Kelly up and placing her in the closet before leaving for his job. As the days and weeks progressed, Alan's brutality increased, and his efforts to control Kelly and keep her silent reached sadistic levels. Alan bragged to cellmates that he used a screwdriver and rag as a crude horsefit of sorts to keep Kelly from screaming. Kelly also sustained blunt force trauma to the head, which Alan confessed to his friend Stephen had occurred during an argument that had ensued because she had cheated on Alan. He stated, "I backhanded her, and she died." Alan also bragged to cellmates that he had Kelly down on the bed with her head in his lap and forced her to watch the clock as he slowly tightened a white ribbon around her neck, strangling her. He too would watch the clock for 5 minutes before releasing his hold, ensuring that Kelly was no longer breathing. He would then use CPR to revive her, and he did this over and over. But there was a point where he choked her, again to the brink of death. Only this time, she lost her motor functions, and even after being revived, she'd lost the ability to speak and no longer had control over her bladder or bowel functioning. Barely clinging to life and suffering brain damage either due to the blunt force trauma or oxygen deprivation, Kelly would remain in this helpless and completely defenseless state for another 2 weeks. Alan would tell his neighbor that he thought she had sustained a skull fracture from falling. On hearing this, the neighbor told Alan he needed to take Kelly to the emergency room, but Alan stated he was taking care of her. As would later be revealed through the testimony of Alan's cellmates, the care he referenced was in fact weeks and weeks of unimaginable torture. After his arrest, Alan enthusiastically shared every chilling detail of the brutality he unleashed on Kelly to his cellmates, to the point that they became so fearful of him that they began sleeping in shifts while one stood watch over the group to ensure their safety. Alan would go on to assault one of his cellmates who had gone to authorities to report all that Alan had bragged about. Serving time with the Michigan Department of Corrections, Daniel Kiefer, one of Alan's cellmates, found himself entangled in the dark narrative of Wade Allen's crimes. On September 25th, Daniel sent a kite revealing he had shared a cell with Wade Allen. In prison settings, a kite is a short memo that inmates fill out to request speaking with either a pastor, mental health counselor, or other professionals within the prison facility. During his in-person meeting with one of the investigators working the Wade Allen case, Daniel claimed that during breakfast, Wade confessed to torturing Kelly Jean in graphic detail, recounting these events to cellmates Chris Drake, Brian Klein, and Randall Miller. Daniel began by declaring his belief that Wade Allen was a serial killer.
Talk about what did Wade Allen tell you guys? Man, dude, this guy is. Well, let me just put it to you like this: he's a serial killer.
He recounted how Alan described strangling Kelly Jean with a white ribbon for 5 minutes while watching the clock, telling her she would die at the hands of someone who loved her, not someone who hated her. Alan claimed he revived Kelly, but she appeared brain dead with changing colors under her eyes, which he later Googled.
Okay, cool. He told us that he physically had this girl down on the bed with a white ribbon around her neck, watching the clock for 5 minutes until she was dead. And he brought her back to life. And when he did, the torture that he put her through before he had choked her out with this white ribbon, he gave us detail on this ribbon and this paracord that he used, and it's gross. It's disgusting.
So he held her on the bed and was strangling her with a white ribbon.
He had her head right here in his lap, with a white ribbon around her neck, with a clock in front of him, watching for 5 minutes. He told her, he says, "You're going to die by someone that loves you and not somebody that hates you."
Alan told Daniel he used a lighter from Dollar General to burn Kelly's tongue, nipples, and private areas, inflicting maximum pain. He also used the screwdriver we referenced earlier to force a rag down her throat to keep her hydrated. After torturing Kelly, Alan admitted to engaging in unspeakable acts with Kelly's lifeless body, stating it was solely for his pleasure.
He says, "I burned her in every way possible to where she would feel pain every time I touched her." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I took a bit, like a screwdriver, and took it through her mouth. He shoved the screwdriver down her throat to gag her, so that she'd always have water, so he'd never have to take it out. That's how he kept her hydrated." And
so
then
he put a screwdriver down her throat?
Yeah, with a rag around it, so she'd stay hydrated, with water on it. And every little while she'd look up like this, and he said he'd take a bottle of water and squish it on the rag, and it'd go through the rag to her throat, so he wouldn't have to take it out.
Okay.
He said that he bought a torch lighter from Dollar General in Sturgis, out to buy, he said, the pediatric center. And he said he burnt her tongue, the tip of her tongue, both of her nipples, and I said, "Wow." I said, "That's gruesome, dude." I said, "What did you do after that?" He says, "I had sex with her." I said, "Are you serious, dude?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Wow." I said, "Didn't you feel bad?" He's like, "It's not for her pleasure, it was for mine." I'm thinking to myself, dude, there's something seriously wrong with you.
So Wade told you that after he burned her tongue, her nipples, and he then had sex with her?
Yeah.
Daniel described how Alan used a sawzall to dismember Kelly's body, starting with her legs below the knees and then above the knees to fit her in the cooler. Prior to dismembering her, Alan kept her body in the bathtub with cold water running to mask the smell as he continued to engage in defiling assaults on Kelly's remains and even showering in the same tub. Alan also told Daniel that during this time, his friend Stephen visited the apartment and unknowingly sat on the cooler containing Kelly's body. During an Ouija board session, Stephen remarked that it would work better if someone had died there, to which Alan responded ominously that it'll probably work then. Daniel expressed concern that Alan was attracted to him and might want an intimate relationship. He emphasized that his cellmates, Chris Drake, Brian Klein, and Randall Miller, were present when Alan described the torture and murder of Kelly. Alan reportedly claimed he killed Kelly because she had cheated on him, boasting that she would never cheat again. Alan went on to tell how he scalded Kelly's feet with hot water to drain bodily fluids from the tub and compared cutting her legs off to slicing through ham. Daniel described how Alan purchased coolers, a shovel, and other items used to dismember Kelly. Alan planned to bury her on West Lafayette Street, near where he was trying to get a job. Before ending the interview, Daniel recalled Alan's chilling words: "If someone cheated on him again, he would kill them and he would get away with it. Each of Alan's cellmates who came forward, while giving slightly varying accounts from their own perspectives, essentially corroborated the testimony of the others. In addition to the testimony of Alan's cellmates, the medical examiner findings would also point to the extreme level of violence and torture sustained by Kelly and were ultimately summarized as cause of death, homicide by unspecified means. As it would turn out, there was such a significant amount of damage that had been done to the body post-mortem, in addition to the extreme level of decomposition, that it was impossible for the medical examiner to pinpoint the exact cause of death. As the news of Wade Allen's arrest spread, the community of Sturgis was left grappling with the horror that had been lurking among them, while some of the most seasoned detectives struggled to cope with a scene that was so horrific they had to turn away. As detectives and crime scene technicians worked tirelessly to process the scene of carnage left behind by Allen, he sat in an interrogation room waiting to talk to investigators and casually smiled and joked as the officer set about ensuring Allen was physically comfortable by offering him cookies and something to drink. When asked if he wanted a couple of cookies, Allen very glibly replies,
Okay.
"Yeah, I'm a greedy guy."
We got some homemade cookies in there that are really good. You want a couple cookies?
That's hard to pass on that. Yeah.
They're sugar cookies. They're like that big. You want a couple of them, or?
Yeah, I'm a greedy guy. I like
Okay.
Considering the events unfolding in that very moment back at Allen's apartment, his words are nothing short of chilling.
And cut up.
Allen,
Nice.
a man with a seemingly ordinary life, had committed an act of unimaginable brutality. In 2023, he was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 39 to 60 years in prison. For those who loved Kelly Jean Warner and the community at large, this was likely only a small consolation. The Wade Allen case is a haunting reminder of the darkness that can hide behind closed doors, and sadly, it is a chilling example of what it is to live in a broken world. It underscores the importance of vigilance, community, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Kelly Jean Warner's tragic end will forever be a somber chapter in Sturgis's history, a story of love turned lethal and a community forever changed. In this fallen world, where the facade of normalcy can mask the darkest of deeds, it becomes our collective responsibility to remain alert and compassionate, to listen to the whispers of those who suffer in silence, and to act decisively in the face of evil. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please seek help immediately by contacting the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. And there you have it. I deeply appreciate your engagement with today's video, as sharing these stories is never easy, but it is crucial for raising awareness. So if you're still watching and found today's video valuable, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more true crime stories. Your engagement helps me to continue to provide this content. Additionally, if you'd like to support the channel, you can visit our online store at bydesignstudiocollection.com for a selection of products I personally recommend. You can also check out the description below for my top Amazon picks. And finally, I'd love to hear from you, so give me a shout out down in the comments and let me know if you liked today's video. And if you have story ideas you'd like me to cover, feel free to email those to chasingshadows@myyahoo.com. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.